Someone's making a lot of noise next door. Welcome back, everybody. Hope that was long enough for y'all to take a quick break, and we're back at it. Next up, we have a fireside chat with Aidan Hyman, and our next speaker with Aidan is one of the people responsible for blockchain technology having an impact on the world beyond Bitcoin. You know, as co-founder of Ethereum and founder and CEO of Consensus, Joe has been a pivotal in directing adoption of Ethereum and in the blockchain space and beyond, with a focus on mainstream adoption. Joe also contributes to ChainSafe vision as a member of the board, and we're super thankful to have Joe here today with us with a fireside chat with Aidan Hyman, ChainSafe's co-founder and CEO. And I am going to promote both of you to the stage. If you could just click the mic and the camera, whichever, and get yourselves on. Perfect. Let's do a quick mic check. How you doing there, Joe and Aidan?
Thanks, Greg.
Doing well, thanks. Thanks
doing
for the intro.
Hey, Aidan. How's it going?
Hey, Joe. Good to see you. Doing well, thanks. And yourself?
I'm doing great, thank you.
I'll let you guys at it.
Awesome. So yeah, as Greg said, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you taking the time. And I know a lot of people are really excited to hear, what you have to say today. It's been a big week for Ethereum in general. So yeah, excited to maybe briefly talk about those things. So firstly, was there a specific moment that you remember when it became clear that you would be focusing your efforts on Ethereum?
Pretty specific. My history in blockchain dates back to early 2011. I guess by the time I was lucky enough to meet Vitalik, which happened because he's a Torontonian and I'm a Torontonian, and I was back over vacation in December 2013, and I'd actually spoken. I reached out to Anthony Diorio because he was doing things with the Global Bitcoin Alliance that were much healthier sounding than what the Bitcoin Foundation was doing. And so Anthony said, there's this guy, Vitalik Buterin, who just wrote a white paper a month ago. And I said, of course, I've been reading Vitalik for a long time. And we're having a meetup, I think it was January 1st, 2014. So I met Vitalik, got a significant download directly from him. Some of it was one-on-one, some of it was just in the context of the meetup. He sent me the white paper that night. I assimilated it quite rapidly and was very excited. And I had a similar reaction to the Bitcoin white paper, where I essentially was a technologist for most of my life, a software engineer, but was in the world of finance in more recent aspects of my career, and felt like the systems of the world were grinding to a halt. There was too much debt in the system, monetary systems were end-of-lifing, and I was disappointed, bordering on depressed about the future of global economy and geopolitics, and I felt in reading the white paper, the Bitcoin white paper, that we had now an opportunity to, instead of complaining, alerting people that something was wrong, we had a chance to take matters into our own hands and start building alternative foundations for re-architecting of the world systems. And Bitcoin it presented the possibility, and Ethereum, as Vitalik articulated it, defined a way that we could pretty rapidly crystallize that activity. So instead of, with Bitcoin, sort of moving all the functional pieces around like atoms with a scanning tunneling microscope, where you're just really low level fiddling in the machine. normal software developers all around the world could get busy architecting the planet in the Ethereum formalism. So it took about 3 weeks, maybe, yeah, about 3 weeks, and we all were invited to a house in, I think a lot of people know this story. We're all invited to a house where we defined some of the early governance and shape of the project in advance of Vitalik delivering his paper at the North American Big Conference in Miami. So in my mind, it was pretty instant, but it took a few weeks to crystallize for a bunch of us. Excited.
Amazing, amazing. And, you know, so many of us are so thankful for those early days and for the creativity beyond the technicality that you and so many people had to see where all of it was going. And that kind of leads us to our next question, which is, how do you encourage creativity within your organizations? You know, how do you get people to think beyond just how we digitally transform current organizations, but really creating the institutional players of tomorrow within a decentralized context?
Creativity is not a problem at Consensus. So I guess, you know, we encourage it by example. Lots of us are constantly walking around spitballing. Do you know if that noise is coming from me? Okay. So I'm always spitballing different ideas, problem solving, coming up with outlandish ideas or approaches. Many others at Consensus do that. There's a lot of, I think, freedom and comfort to go out on a limb. There is freedom to fail. We come from an unusual place compared to most companies in that we were formed before our mission was possible, in the sense that Consensus started when there was no real Ethereum ecosystem. There was no infrastructure, there was no developer tooling, and so we just gathered as many of the best and brightest, most philosophically aligned people to explore the solution space. And that involved just running lots of experiments. And we learned tons from many experiments that didn't ultimately manifest in a product. But it's always been part of our DNA to build out the next thing. And it's sort of, I guess, when you're building foundations for the emerging global decentralized digital economy, and when you're building some of the elements of it, some of the applications of it, you really have a lot of creative license. And so creativity is just not a problem at Consensus.
Totally, and we're all very thankful for that. Kind of, I guess, going back to that perspective you had coming into things in the early days, is there a specific project or group of projects that you would have never really imagined to have taken place in the same maybe timeline or scope that we're seeing today in Ethereum?
Specific project. So I think we imagined a lot of things. So we certainly imagined DeFi, and not exactly, obviously, as it's evolving, and it's really a marvel to observe how incredible the construction of a democratized financial infrastructure layer for the planet is. But we certainly, stable coins were already a thing. They were a thing in the BitShares context, and issuing equity, issuing bonds. We had this notion that there would be bots running around securitizing different kinds of financial instruments in real time and selling off tranches of those things. And that's probably going to happen at some point in the future. ICOs were a thing. We didn't call the Ethereum crowd sale an ICO, but MadeSafe had done one, Mastercoin had done one, Ethereum did it, and so it wasn't really the ICO craze that we were early on, but it was certainly the early stages of DeFi, and the DAO itself was an early stage of DeFi. So we did assume that layer 2 and probably higher layers would be necessary for scaling. We talked sharding, we talked proof of stake in the very, very early days. There was talk of that in the Miami house. So probably the thing that I didn't imagine, and maybe very few people imagined, was that the base trust layer, layer 1, would be less the seat of computation and like data storage for everything, and it's looking like layer 1 will be used as a sort of coordination validation layer rather than having important aspects of the world computer computed
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's a really incredible development that we're seeing in general, even with ETH2, in terms of, I guess, just also going back to the question of creativity in how creative the Ethereum community is, and always working towards what makes sense to get to, what we're looking for, which is mainstream adoption and the utility of a decentralized platform like Ethereum. So I think that fluidity, as long as it moves towards that moving target, is really one of the best qualities in Ethereum and what makes me so excited to be a part of the community. And then I guess kind of one of the questions that kind of relates to that, I mean, they're all kind of related, is what projects in the current landscape or in the ecosystem landscape will be the largest contributors to mainstream adoption that don't really get a lot of attention? And this could be, something on the governance side of things, from a social coordination perspective to, technical things. In general, what is something that not too many people know about, but is a real critical aspect to all of this?
So I almost have to ignore the constraint of not too many people knowing about stuff, because it depends what audience you're talking about. Nobody knows about any of this stuff really on planet Earth. So forgive me for just talking about some of the things that many of us have heard about. So obviously zero knowledge techniques are going to be incredibly important, and we're going to have to get the world really comfortable with that, and get them comfortable with the notion that there is some sort of backdoor or some sort of flaw that's printing a whole bunch of tokens when it should be printing tokens. I know the math is solid, but tell that to the regulators. So you have to split that into enterprise versus consumer. I think that the next 12 months are going to be eye-opening for enterprise, specifically because of a protocol called Baseline and how it will interact with DeFi. So Baseline is a protocol that we pioneered with Ernst & Young with a bit of support from Microsoft. And it essentially enables organizations to coordinate either agreements or business processes via zero-knowledge proofs lodged into mainnet, into a smart contract on mainnet, and to do so without any concern that any private information would leak. So sensitive information is kept in systems of record on everybody's side of their own firewall, and a frame of reference, the Ethereum mainnet, helps keep everybody in sync. So there's a ton of traction right now amongst a whole bunch of different companies. Coca-Cola Bottlers of North America made a splash by saying that they're using it to make their supply chain transparent. And the incredibly exciting thing about this is that as DeFi continues to mature and it becomes a large set of pools of capital that can be used for different purposes, whether it's borrowing or insurance, or creating derivatives. The elements of baseline interactions are going to be very significantly tokenized. So you can tokenize commodities or products in a procurement network. You will be paying with tokenized money, stable coins. Invoices can be tokenized. Other kinds of instruments in the system can be tokenized. And so we'll see factorization of these tokenized invoices, and the money's there. The mechanisms are there. The companies are going to are already starting to use Baseline, and it's sitting right beside all those magic internet money Legos that represent DeFi, and so it's inevitable. We'll see Baseline projects use DeFi within 12 months, almost certainly.
That's incredibly exciting to hear, and I think important for people to appreciate the significance that will bring. Just as the early internet needed that fuel from traditional business, so do we need to ensure that our tooling makes sense for the real world and not just for our kind of siloed off ecosystem, which, as you said, no one really knows too much about.
Yeah, and let me quickly answer from the perspective of the consumer. So I think games are really going to break out, and DeFi is going to be relevant to normal people. In a world of low and negative interest rates, there's some talk that interest rates will rise, but we'll see. It's not just the tech nerds and the financial nerds that are going to find this stuff interesting. As companies like ours and others get better at making the technology more accessible, more usable, then these bank accounts, effectively these online self-custody bank accounts with lots of different features that provide significant yields in assets that are likely to appreciate rather than become debased by central banks. That's going to be a very compelling proposition. So as the legacy financial world does all the things that it needs to do to keep breathing, those things are going to push more and more people in our direction.
Absolutely. And I just think that people don't really appreciate how much the economics of staking really plays into all of the things you've just mentioned, where new influx of monetary supply is now entering the space by the people who are actually facilitating the businesses or the kind of applications at all layers of the stack. And that is completely unheard of. Right, we're really taking out a massive layer that right now disintermediates between the capital creation and how we use that capital in our day-to-day lives. So I think that that's something people really don't appreciate, is what proof of stake really does to democratize that access to capital in an incredibly innovative way. I guess, one of the questions, or a couple of the questions that we have that are not really necessarily tech related, but just as a leader, something we thought, you would definitely have an incredible amount of insight on, which is what are, a few of the characteristics that you believe every effective leader needs to have. And this could be, this could answer to a whole different type of, a whole different wide group of types of leaders. But in general, what are things that, people listening that are looking to start, businesses, what are, the qualities that you think should definitely be a part of their repertoire, I guess, as they're going through their day-to-days?
Well, I think there are different potential effective styles of leadership in different situations. Depends on the nature of your organization, depends on the nature of your personnel. For our situation, we have different kinds of governance in our different groups, and we're doing a good job of bringing them all together into a coherent, integrated company. And the projects that do the best have leaders who hold the attitude of being in service to their teammates, and focusing on doing what it takes to enable those around them to be better at their jobs, to be happier, to be satisfyingly autonomous, therefore more creative. We've seen our different projects organically evolve their governance, and we've seen a situation which came to a head a few years ago in our protocol engineering group, where there was the assumption by some of the leaders that they were in control, and they were kind of telling people.
I think we lost him.
I think, am I back? Can you hear me?
Sorry, I was on mute. We can hear you perfectly.
Okay, great. So we had a situation in our protocol engineering group where the leaders of that group, who were extremely well-intentioned, just fell back to normal styles of command and control. And a lot of the people that had joined Consensus joined because they thought there was going to be a new approach, a more decentralized approach to governance. And it turned out that we had long discussions, and we suggested that this group was going to be together for a very long time, so it should figure out governance that everybody could buy into and own. And they put together a great system, which keeps getting iterated. They do very structured decision making, and it's been since then a very tight knit, very high functioning group. So a good example of ways that we can, I guess, organize going forward. And a lot of the techniques that were pioneered in that group have made their way across to other projects in Consensus.
That's incredible. And I think something that people don't appreciate is that when you are a leader or putting people into and allowing or empowering people in positions of leadership, the goal is not to count and just do that with the expectation of success, but rather with the expectation that just like everyone in the world, they're going to fail. And it's through that failure that the best growth will occur. And a lot of times in traditional organizations, the expectation of leaders is that they will always be successful. And that can obviously never happen. And so I think it's really important to be honest about what we're expecting of people, and that's for them to learn and to grow and to adapt, as we all need to do as well.
Yep.
I'm really enjoying this conversation, and I was wondering, I guess, outside of our questions, what are some lessons that you would impart on any new entrepreneur in the space, new leader joining the space, or just someone that's sitting on Twitter, sitting on Telegram, and really excited and wants to get involved? What would be, in your opinion, outside of technicalities, things that can, that people can do to learn more and really get the most out of this ecosystem?
So there's just so much information out there. So learn a ton, make yourself expert in one or more things. Make sure those one or more things are things that you're really passionate about, because it's going to be a long haul and it's going to be hard. Plan for 7 years or more. Could happen faster, who knows? Back to your comment on failing and making it safe and efficient to fail. You do want to, moving towards a success is basically an obstacle course, and you got to bump off lots of things, and each of those could be considered little failures or shaping of your ultimate destination. And so fail a lot while interspersing little successes that move the project forward, and make sure you survive. If you survive, you will win, by definition.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important for people to understand that to succeed requires failure, right? Like, these things don't happen in isolation of one another. And it is the person's ability to handle those failures that is what leads to that success. But as you're saying, you need to survive, and you need a plan, and you need to have a coherent system in place for how we, handle those things. Because
if you look at proof of stake, I mean, were there so many failures along the way between those discussions in Miami and Tuesday morning? Or was it just Vitalik and others wielding a chisel to construct the proof of stake sculpture?
Absolutely. That's an actual, use case for how these things do evolve. And a lot of people along the way would always, question when and why not, and just be confused really with this organic, creative, innovative process that is really unique in the Ethereum space, where this notion that, just because we had an idea at one point does not mean that that needs to shape the way in which we move forward. And I personally find that to be incredibly transparent and just honest, right? Because at the end of the day, it is the ability to pivot effectively that allows you to survive. And so, I think that that's the biggest value that we bring as a community, is the ability for anyone to post anything on ETH Research, and for that to somehow have an impactful trajectory, or to impact the trajectory in an impactful way within this incredibly, incredibly large community. And that's something that is quite unique. Yeah, so we don't have too much time left. And I guess just a really great way to just maybe leave things off outside of, technical improvements to Ethereum in the coming years, outside of baseline protocol, this notion of staking as an economic kind of incentive to securitizing a network as big as Ethereum is really unseen before. What are, in your opinion, the most exciting opportunities? We're seeing things like staking derivatives taking place. What are these exciting new business models and new ways in which people can start to think about what will be necessary in the future of Ethereum? Because not many people know that Tachyon had an accelerator a year previous to the DeFi summer focused on DeFi. And at the time, a lot of people were, maybe not aware of how much effort was going into creating not just a narrative, but a group of projects that would then define what was the last summer and now going into 2021, which is this widespread narrative that is taking over Ethereum. And people don't really appreciate how much planning and effort went into that, right? And so my question to you is, with proof of stake, what's next for these new and innovative projects?
So what I'm excited about is, I guess, related to the what could be considered a cascading global economic and geopolitical collapse that we're all embroiled in, where there are health issues that are helping drive economic health issues, and the political systems on the planet are just so mind-blowingly broken. They don't represent anybody, or they represent a very, very tiny percentage of the people that they're supposed to represent, and that's in good times, let alone where we are right now, which is just preposterous. So what I'm excited about is integration, is coherence amongst a whole bunch of systems. It's granularity of governance, granularity of application. So we've built a technology for a new trust foundation for the planet. We are enabling the planet to move from systems that are based on subjective, generally centralized trust systems, which are pretty manipulable. Often they work quite well. They've brought society tremendous distances, but we can do better. We can now build automated and objective trust as the foundation for trust for the planet, and that foundation has enabled this new financial infrastructure to start being built. And the Trust Foundation enables trustworthy collaboration. So whether it's DAOs or LAOs or other kinds of collaboration constructs, we can gather people or organizations or bots into a single framework where everybody knows the rules, so where things are quite transparent. These constructs can create their own magic internet money. They can use that money or other money that they acquire to incentivize people to achieve the goals of this particular group. And staking is going to be a huge part of that. Staking represents the ability for people, small organizations, to have economic and political agency in many of the things they care about, whether it's a game or a music band or a research project, a cure for a disease, or just a business. And what I think is going to be really incredible is rather than having two parties or three parties, as in certain countries, or one party as in many countries, we can have as many parties, as many political and economic organizations as are needed in real time by the society. And so a group of people identifies a problem, they form this construct which can define its goals, raise money, execute the goals, and then it can sort of diffuse back into the sea of potentiality, where those people and that capital, maybe they've already solved a problem and they don't need to keep that together, or maybe it becomes a persistent or durable construct. But the beauty is that the focus will be granular. People will see their issues resolved in as close to real time as is humanly possible, I think. And it's going to be a very fluid, very fast moving, hopefully much healthier society.
100%. I think everyone listening can definitely agree with that. And, you know, that to me is one of the things that makes me most proud to be able to work in this space, is that so many of us really do feel the way that you've just kind of expressed yourself. And that is something that I don't see in other industries, where you have just a widespread, general, maybe pragmatic perspective on what is going on now, but an optimism for what can come later. And maybe that goes through some very negative kind of times, but there is hope and light at the end of the tunnel if people do decide to contribute to that vision. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to talk today, Joe, and for helping shape us on our journey as we grow. We couldn't be more proud to have that. No one else knows the things we're going through more than you. So thank you so much for everything you do for the space and for ChainSafe as a whole.
Cool. Thanks, Aidan. It's been a pleasure. May all your chains stay safe.
Thank you so much, Joe. Have a great day. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Aidan. Thank you, Joe. That was wonderful, and really enjoyed that. For the rest of the conference, just want to say I'm signing out, but I've got a wonderful colleague of mine joining me, somebody that I probably spend more hours, ripping apart other people's UX. And also somebody that, tries to convince me the Domino's checkout UI is arguably one of the best UIs in the space. Bringing on Cindy, from ChainSafe, who is going to be taking over emceeing for the day. So everybody give her a nice warm welcome as she carries out the rest of CSCON.
Hey guys, gonna be taking you for the next shift. Gonna be hosting. We have an excellent lineup for the next 4 hours. So I will be your host. Buckle up, grab a cup of tea, get a snack, because it's gonna be a wild ride. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker for the afternoon. It's actually work on full time. This is a project that ChainSafe is unveiling for the first time. So this is very exciting since we are a consultancy and we work on many projects involving public infrastructure. It's my pleasure to introduce the first time that we are working on something different, which is creating an app for users outside of this space. With a warm welcome, I'm going to bring on stage a project manager from ChainSafe Products, Colin Schwartz, and the Chief Product Officer at ChainSafe, Priyam Chowdhury, and they are both leading the development on ChainSafe Files, which is an app that is bringing encrypted file storage at scale based on the Filecoin network. Let's see. I'm gonna bring you guys up.
All right.
All right.
Me?
What up?
Hello, hello. Thanks, Cindy, for the intro. Great.
Awesome. Thanks again, Cindy, for that great intro. I'm going to kick it off now. All right. I hope everyone can see my screen. If you can't, please let me know, Cindy. All right. So ChainSafe Files. As Aidan mentioned during his amazing talk a few days ago, ChainSafe has been in the process of productizing a lot of the work that we've been doing over the past several years. And as Cindy pointed out, this is the first product that we have the pleasure of sharing a sneak peek with you today. So I really couldn't be more excited to be here.
Your screen turned off.
Yeah, I got it. All right. So ChainSafe Files, what is it? At a glance, it is encrypted, decentralized storage for everyone. And we're going to get into exactly what that looks like and how it works. But before we do, I'd like to introduce to you our incredible team. So as Cindy mentioned, the products team as well as the files team is headed up by Priyam, co-founder of ChainSafe, as well as our chief product officer. The product is managed by myself, Colin Schwartz, and then the design efforts are headed up by Cindy, our head designer. And then we have two development teams, a front end and a back end team. Our front end tech lead is Mike, and our back end tech lead is Peter. And then our back end devs include Sadiq, Ajoy, and Arun, who is also our DevOps specialist. And in addition to Mike, our front-end team is comprised of Ryan and Tanmoy. So I just want to give a huge shout out to this team. They've done incredible work to bring us to where we are today. And I sincerely look forward to working with them in the future to deliver more amazing features and products to you. So a quick look at what we're going to be talking about today. I'll start out by explaining the motivation behind ChainSafe files, chatting a bit about the Web 2 file storage space and how it compares to Web 3. I'll then give some background on the current distributed file storage space and how ChainSafe fits into it. We're involved in more than one way. And then I'm going to hand you off to Priyam. He'll be giving you an overview of the product itself. He's then going to chat about some of the features and the technology that underlies ChainSafe files. And then what I'm most excited for is we're going to share with you a demo. This will be the first sneak peek that anyone outside of our organization has had of ChainSafe files. So I'm really excited to share that with you today. Okay, so the beginning of this journey really starts with Web 2 cloud storage. Now, Web 2, I mean, there was a time not too long ago when digital file storage had to be done on your own machine. And obviously, this imposes some severe limitations. And so the concept of being able to store your data in the cloud on someone else's machine was really revolutionary when it came out. And it empowered a lot of businesses and individuals to do some incredible things. However, and unfortunately, like so many other aspects of the traditional web as we know it today, or what we like to call the Web 2, file storage was and still is very centralized, right? It's owned by just a few massive corporations. It exploits user data, just like all these other aspects of the Web 2 space. It constitutes a major invasion of user privacy, which is really, really bad. And obviously, it's insecure. And so we know we can do better at ChainSafe, and there's a lot of people in the space who think we can do better than this too. And so Web 3 cloud storage, if done correctly, seeks to solve all of these issues that I just pointed out. It's going to be distributed or decentralized. It will protect users' data rather than exploiting it. It will offer much better privacy, and as a result of all of this, it will be a lot more secure. So these are the central tenets to which we are aspiring with our product and with our further involvement in the distributed storage space. So now for just a quick run through of that space in particular and how ChainSafe fits into it. So one of the really amazing products that is out there currently and has been around for several years is the Interplanetary File System, IPFS. There was actually an incredible talk on this by Molly just a few days ago here at the conference. So if you did not have the pleasure of seeing that live, I encourage you to go check it out. It's going to be on our YouTube, accessible via Twitter. So IPFS is a free service, and it provides file storage that is distributed and secure for anyone who would like to use it. However, there is no incentive for the storage providers. So anyone who's providing storage on this network has to do so out of the kindness of their own heart. And while there are a tremendous number of people who are doing this every day and are still doing this, the lack of incentives does impose some sort of scalability limitations. So this is where Filecoin comes in. Obviously, Filecoin has been a lot in the news lately. They launched just recently. It's a very exciting time for that ecosystem. And what Filecoin does is it incentivizes distributed storage, and it leverages blockchain technology to do so. So users can pay with the Filecoin token Phil for their storage needs, and storage providers are incentivized with that token to provide the storage. And this allows for a lot more scalability, and users can know that their data is going to be safe for years to come because they're paying for it, and these people have monetary incentives to provide that service. So we couldn't be prouder to be working on Forest, which is our very own implementation of the Filecoin blockchain written in Rust. Forest is a highly performant Filecoin node, and it increases the liveness and redundancy of the Filecoin network. You can check out our talk by Austin Abel, the tech lead of Forest. He gave an incredible talk here at the conference, and that will also be available on YouTube if you didn't get to see it live. And you can check out the code here on our GitHub. So ChainSafe is also involved in building secondary retrieval markets for the Filecoin network. And what these do is they reduce reliance on the storage miners, and they improve the network speed and reliability, and they allow the network to scale even further. So it's a really important part of this ecosystem. The work is still in progress, but there's a lot of code that's already been committed, so you can check it out on our GitHub here as well. And David gave an incredible presentation on this also earlier in the conference. So again, check that out if you haven't already. So yeah, we've been involved in the distributed storage ecosystem for quite some time now in a number of ways. And ChainSafe Files is the natural progression of this space. We see this product as sort of the final step to taking all of these incredible technologies that I've just discussed with all of these benefits of decentralization and privacy, and delivering those in a way that is simple and user-friendly and ideal for everyday users. And this is something that's been talked about a lot at this conference, is that in order to achieve mass adoption, we really need to abstract away all of the complexities of these incredible technologies that we're building and deliver a clean and simple product to everyday users who are familiar with Web 2 applications, so that they don't have to learn all of these complexities, and so that anybody, literally anybody with a computer or a mobile device can access this without any overhead. So before I hand you off to Priyam, who's going to really talk about the details of this stuff, I just want to point out and reiterate that this is simply the first of many ChainSafe products. We have a lot of exciting new features for ChainSafe Files that are in the works, as well as other products that are related to other ecosystems in which we are involved. So it's going to be a very exciting upcoming year for us. Stay tuned on our Twitter and other social for announcements about this product and many more to come. All right, and with that, I'll bring on Priyam to carry on.
Awesome. Thanks, Colin. It was a great presentation. All right. I'll share my screen quickly. Screen's good. Cool. Awesome. Good morning or good evening, depending on where you are. I'm Priyam, and thanks, Colin, for the great presentation, a quick intro. I'm going to start with a quick overview of ChainSafe Files, how we have built it, and what is the motivation behind it, and what are some of the key features we have. First of all, ChainSafe Files is built on top of distributed and decentralized storage, such as Ipfs and Filecoin, which definitely gives the benefit of moving away from centralized cloud like big tech corporations. Second, we take privacy seriously, and we do the privacy as first approach. So every single files you have uploaded, you upload to a platform is encrypted by default, and your data is always private and secured. Nobody can see it, and we don't really sell your data like other companies do. We have also enabled Web3 login and crypto payment, and if you want to be more anonymous, you can use that, and no email is even required. So complete anonymous, complete privacy and security. We try to build ChainSafe Files as intuitive as possible, just to mimic what are the existing products are there. If you're in Web 2, traditional products, and it should be very easy to transition without having to know a lot about blockchain or anything about blockchain. Cool. Just a quick how the Web 3 and Web 2 kind of works. Traditional Web 2, you basically have a backend server. You connect to a centralized cloud storage provider, which is typically a top like big 3 tech cloud providers, and where all your data is stored in one data center or a couple of data centers. Right, but with Web3, you have Ipfs and Filecoin, which is decentralized distributed storage system, which is like span over all geolocations, and your data is stored distributed. So no central servers, no single point of failure, and no privacy issues. Cool. Just a quick overview of our tech stack using Ipfs and Filecoin for storage, Ethereum for crypto payment, and Web3 login, and Kubernetes for deployment. As you can see, like very quick screenshot of our UI. We try to make it as easy and clean as possible to abstract all the complexities of blockchain, like Filecoin or anything. You don't have to know anything about blockchain to use this product. If you're coming from a traditional, like an existing cloud storage customer, it should be very easy to use. Cool. Quick tech breakdown. We have what encryption are we using? We're using a standard AES-256 end-to-end encryption by default. So the moment you enter our product, you start uploading files, all your files are encrypted end-to-end. So every single thing is encrypted. So we can't see your files, or your files can be shared as well. We are also continuously improving and adding more encryption methods and more for advanced use cases. So stay tuned. We're going to add some cool features next year. With this, we have also built a virtual file system, basically from ground up to suit our needs, which is basically mimics like kind of a Unix API, how you interact with your traditional operating system and bringing up in the browser, like the common commands like a move, like copy, or like rm, like mkdir. This was heavily inspired by Ethereum Swarm and IPLD, which allowed us to take this approach and build like a really robust file system. Like I mentioned before, we're using decentralized storage solution. We are using Ipfs for hot and caching storage, like for fast and quick retrieval. And we're using Filecoin for archiving, redundancy, and durability. And it's spanned as it spanned across all over the world. And your data is secured, and you can have multiple redundancies as possible. And since it's an open market, so no vendor lock, it's really cheap storage. And yeah, and we've also managed to automate the Filecoin deal management. So there's a thing called Filecoin deals, which can get really complex. But for our users, you don't have to master Filecoin or any blockchain to use our product. We have automatically managed that under the hood, and everything is done automatically. So, combining everything, all of this combines like data privacy, security, freedom, and reliability. Cool. I'm going to go through a quick demo produced by Cindy. So let's do a walkthrough of that.
The beta of ChainSafe files. When we were designing this app, we wanted to feel Hey, Priyam, the audio looks like it's off. Do you think we can restart that?
Oh, shit. Is it off now? Is it working?
Why don't we start over?
Okay.
The beta of ChainSafe files. When we were designing this app, we wanted to feel very friendly and familiar. No technical knowledge required. Don't need to know what pinning means. Might not even know that you're storing files on a decentralized peer-to-peer network. All right, let's get started. A couple ways to log in. I'm going to go with MetaMask. That's where I'm feeling. Now, let's say that I'm a production company and I care a lot about my intellectual property and I care a lot about privacy, but I also have a lot of data. Again, like 10 gigs a day, and I can't keep paying for
other services. It's pretty easy to use. 2 ways to upload. So you can click and browse files. I'm going to upload this note from my editor. Going to upload some dailies in my production schedule. Saw this contract come in. There's been some posters that my designers have been working on. All right, let's take a look to see that everything's right. Okay. And if I want to download it from a preview, I can do that right there. Let's just check to see that everything's okay. Yep, the details are good. Download it. Right. Okay, let's take a look at the dailies, what we're dealing with today. Looks good. Now to get that done ASAP for this commercial we're on. This is the note from my editor. I'll get back to that later. Some contracts. Gonna have to fill this one out. Right. And of course my production schedule. Okay, cool. So let's make a place for all of those things. Just gonna organize it out because I know it's going to get messy. Put in the notes, why not? All right, well, this is a first look at ChainSafe files. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Cindy, for putting up this quick demo. Really great. Let's go next.
The beta of ChainSafe.
Sorry.
The beta of ChainSafe files. When we.
Cool. I'm happy to announce that ChainSafe files is going to be generally available for everyone next week. So please keep an eye out on Twitter. We'll launch an announcement very soon. I hope you like the product. If you want to get in touch with me or call in on ChainSafe, please reach out on Twitter. We are always available. And yeah, just want to say we are also hiring Rust, Go, TypeScript, DevOps engineers. Feel free to apply and just send out to anyone you would like. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I hope you like the presentation and you're enjoying the CSCON. Enjoy. Take questions if there's any.
Great job, guys. So we've got 2 questions here. Our first question for you is, aside from privacy, what can ChainSafe files do potentially that existing solutions like Dropbox can't do?
Great question. So privacy has been our primary focus, and tapping into the open, more modern solutions like Filecoin is which gives a new open market, basically cutting edge technology. That would be our primary goal. We're trying to bring up more features and products. We'll just announce down the road. We have a good year ahead, 2021. So please stay tuned for our announcements.
All right, great. So our next question is, will I be able to retrieve my files directly from the Filecoin network if ChainSafe files goes down?
We are going to enable that options. That will be down the road. We are also going to announce another product in coming months, early next year. So can't really tease anything about it too much about it. So please stay tuned for that.
All right, guys. So I guess we'll have to wait to find out what that is, although it is in the works. And thank you very much, guys. This is close to my heart, and hope everyone enjoys it and tests it out next week when we go live.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. So the next person that I'm introducing is Head of Public Affairs at Parity Technologies. I'm sure that title does not necessarily encapsulate what he does day to day. I'm sure there's a lot of things that go under that title. This is Peter Mauric from Parity Technologies. Peter, you just got to share your, yep, there I see you.
How's it going?
Floor's all yours.
Thank you very much. Sharing the screen here. Alrighty. All right. I'm going to be talking to you all today about what I'm calling Media 3.0's masthead. Thank you for having me today. My name, as Cindy said, is Peter Mauric. I'm head of public affairs at Parity Technologies. I do quite a lot. It includes a decent amount of work in media, in sort of politics and regulatory strategy, both on-chain and off. A little bit about my history before I joined the Parity Technologies. Before I got into blockchain full time, I was a principal at a public affairs consulting firm called Kivit, based here in New York, where I'm speaking to you from, with offices in DC and Chicago. It was a firm that was founded by David Axelrod and a few other folks after they left the Obama administration. So I come from like a political world that's very closely tied in with media, and been working with media organizations, big and small, for a decade now. I've done everything from battling with the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, down to energy industry publications and everything in between. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about sort of what I see as the future of media and how these Web3 technologies are going to impact communications technologies that we use to distribute information. If I'm a little bit tired or less energetic than usual, I apologize. I spent all day yesterday hosting Polkadot Decoded. If you all want to review or rewatch or watch for the first time, you just scan this code and it'll take you to the Crowdcast where all of the sessions from yesterday are hosted. We had a really great turnout and a lot of really good content on Polkadot. I'm not going to be specifically talking about Polkadot content in this talk, but if you want Polkadot content, that's the place to go. In addition to a couple of other speakers today from Parity Technologies, Web3, and the Polkadot ecosystem. So when we talk about the evolution from Web 1 to Web 2 to Web 3, we also, there's sort of parallel, a lot of parallels between that evolution of this information technology and the evolution of media and news and where we get our information. So I really enjoyed this cartoon by Mike O'Keefe when he was at the Denver Post, how we sort of started chiseling words into blocks in a couple characters. We pursued technologies that would allow us to distribute news and information more easily. So inventing the printing press, getting to the point where we could print out many newspapers. And then the advent of digital information technologies and the internet led to things like email. And ironically, now we're at a place where a lot of us do a lot of communication over Twitter, where we're back to chipping 140 words into our phone, similar to how we used to be able to chip 150 to 200 words into a rock wall. So Media 1.0 is really this original genesis of how we communicate with each other. So it's language, it's shouting out your opinions in the town square, it is talking and chatting through the local news at the town pub, it's your family, it's your friends networks, these really peer-to-peer, land-based, meet space-based manners of communication and getting information. Literally whispering into someone's ear. Media 2.0 is, in my opinion, is when we introduce these intermediate communications technologies and distribution platforms. So obviously the printing press was a major first step in Media 2.0. We were able to reprint exactly the same words dozens and dozens and potentially then evolving to hundreds and thousands of times. And we could send newspapers with 100 pages, 100 miles away to hundreds of thousands of people, which really changed the way we were able to communicate what was going on in the world. Obviously, radio, television took this to another level, and then the internet really supercharged it. And I would say the early internet to today is really the long tail end of the Media 2.0 period of this evolution. So a lot of trust is required because you are relying on reporters and news outlets and publications to sort through what's going on, synthesize it, and then deliver it to you, whether you're reading a newspaper or you're listening to the radio. There is this intermediary between you and the actual events in the world that happened. Media 3.0 is, again, the disintermediation of a lot of the news sources and publications and information streams that we're used to getting, right? So we talk a lot about in terms of Web 3.0, having the pipes of the internet back in the hands of the people that use it rather than being owned by these intermediaries. In a lot of the same way, I envision Media 3.0 being a lot more niche and a lot more community owned and driven, rather than having, say, a New York Times or a Washington Post mega multi-million, multi-hundred million dollar operations that have to run on subscriptions and advertising for revenue and really do need like a business model because they're driving for a business success, profit and loss a lot of times at the end of the day. The Media 3.0, as it emerges, is going to likely be less reliant on those sorts of business models and more reliant on the community that they serve. So again, this idea that we can have these networks of information sources that are not reliant on a publisher or not reliant on a distribution network like the New York Times owns, but rather a network of individuals who are communicating information that they have verified to be true and delivering them through trustless avenues. So I think right now in the world, we're at sort of like a Media 2.5 space where we're starting to see the movement towards more individually owned and operated news sources, right? So obviously podcasting is a big part of this evolution from Media 2 to Media 3.0. And it's being noticed, right? The Joe Rogan Spotify deal was a prime example of a corporation seeing the value in a individually owned and operated news source, information stream, and paying up for it to fund it in a big way for the long term without owning it. They don't have an ownership stake in the podcast. It's still owned by Joe Rogan, but they're just going to become the exclusive distributor of this independently owned and operated podcast with a massive audience. We've also seen a lot of really prominent writers leaving their outlets for Substack, and obviously Substack is quite widely used in crypto. A lot of valuable independent journalists have used it to build a following. Camilla Russo with The Defiant was probably the most significant recent example of launching an outlet heavily based on a paid Substack newsletter. If you don't pay for that reporting and get the Defiant newsletter, I highly recommend that you do, because it's good quality independent journalism, and it's the sort of thing that we need to support as we move through this transition from Media 2.5 to Media 3.0. The Columbia Journalism Review called it the Substackerati, like the glitterati of Substack. I found that ironic. We're also then seeing the advent of new communications medium that allow us to disintermediate the debate around a conversation that happens in the news. So Discord is a very good example of sort of this niche piece of the internet that brings us back to a lot of the peer-to-peer communication that we originally foresaw with these communications media. So I want to talk a bit about the history of media generally, if you're not familiar, the New York World is really a fascinating case study and historical a reference point for how media evolved. It was a newspaper. I don't know if it was originally owned by Joseph Pulitzer or he came and bought it later. It changed hands between a couple of these early media barons in the mid to late 1800s. And it was at the forefront of a couple different key concepts that I'm going to discuss. First being the idea of like investigative journalism, and the second being the idea of yellow journalism. And I don't mean yellow journalism in the sort of the sensationalist news sense. Originally, yellow journalism was more a reference to businesses, industries owning and operating news publications that are, let's say, a bit biased on purpose towards the success of their own business interests. And the World was at the forefront of that. Nellie Bly is known widely to be one of the first ever investigative journalists, and the New York World was the outlet that allowed her to sort of launch this concept with her big story with the New York World that sort of introduced the concept of investigative journalism. Was she went undercover and lived in a mental institution on Roosevelt Island here in New York for 10 days and wrote a story revealing all the atrocities that went on to these women in this mental institution that usually you would never be able to get in, and really launched a new wave of understanding of like what journalism could accomplish in the real world to like help people and improve society as a whole. Yellow journalism, on the other hand, became like the earliest form of clickbait when there was still newspapers were still the main communications media, the main news communications media. It relied heavily on sensationalist headlines to sell papers. It was heavily laden with cartoons and illustrations. And over time, people learned not to trust it because they realized it was selling them a fake or false bill of goods. However, it did have a very important place in its early days in terms of driving conversations for really specific business interests that would not otherwise have had a voice if they were completely reliant on established news media at the time. So the last piece of this in the last 20 or so minutes, I want to talk about what a purely Web3 based media outlet could look like. So I'll talk a little bit about Polkadot and how a Polkadot applies to this idea that I'm looking to develop further. But there's a lack in the media covering the web today and crypto of a news outlet or an information source that is owned, operated, and trusted by the community. CoinDesk is owned by DCG. Decrypt is owned by Consensus. I'm not sure who owns Cointelegraph, but these are all businesses that are operating for business sake. Obviously, there's the reporters and editors at these outlets do want to cover the space, but at the end of the day, there's like business decisions and forces at play that will always tend to corrupt what's covered, sort of the editorial direction of an outlet. They will outlets, and not just in crypto, but across the spectrum, will tend to cover anything that will bring in viewers that they can use to drive ad revenue or subscriptions, rather than covering what's really important, right? Like there's plenty of shitcoins out there that get plenty of media attention. There's plenty of teams and protocols that take a purely media first position on a lot of things and are out there written about often, when in reality we know that the technology underpinning what they're working on isn't particularly interesting or innovative. So what would a outlet that's purely based on Web3 technologies and owned by a Web3 community look like? So I have a concept for what I want to call the web. The web is, in my mind, a Web3 only outlet without a need for a business model to drive profit for some entity. And that is the editorial direction and operation relies on on-chain operations conducted by a community of people who know what the news that they want covered in the space is, and goes out and sources journalists to cover the news, and then delivers it, I would say, in an interesting and new way. So the web is a parathread and an oracle, which produces a free monthly newspaper delivered via PDF over SMS with no Web2 presence other than a subscriber portal. So a fairly recent new delivery medium for newspapers is actually sending you text updates. Now, many outlets do this, but I would say none of them do it particularly well, and none of them are thinking about it as their main gateway into their subscribers' mind space. But in reality, we know that SMS open rates are by far the highest, most widely opened communications. We tend to open texts first. So I think early on when SMS for advocacy was being rolled out, and I was talking to some of the vendors that do this kind of stuff, I think they were saying somewhere in the 95 to 98% open rate. So now a couple of media outlets, I think I have The Block, who send me like their headlines via SMS and then links to their website so you can read more. I have a couple of other sort of non-crypto news outlets that send me a digest. There's one news outlet out there now called The New Paper, which sends sort of like 5 or 10 news stories in a rundown, sort of like a newsletter brief, but over texts. And it is, I think, the first I've seen that is almost a purely SMS-based news outlet. None of these, though, are thinking about how far we can take this or fully leveraging the technology available to deliver a really rich media experience in SMS. So there's a lot we can do if we were able to deliver a PDF newspaper over SMS to a niche core subscriber base that are highly engaged and highly influential in the space. That is then also owned and operated by the community of readers and understand what they want to read about, right? So this is where I'm going to start talking a bit about Polkadot governance. There's some concepts in here that might be a little bit too complicated to explain now. I'll have another link at the end where you can go in and link to Polkadot Decoded, and definitely check out my talk from yesterday with Raul, also from Parity Technologies, about Polkadot's governance, because a lot of the concepts that I'm going to discuss and how we would govern a media outlet on chain is based on the basic premise and operations of Polkadot's governance. But long story short, the web is going to serve its community, sourcing stories and reporters covering the transition from Web 2 to Web 3. Its editorial direction will be publicly governed by its stakeholders and funded by an on-chain treasury. So there is no need for a profit motive. It can be funded, the web could be funded from Polkadot Treasury as a public good for the Polkadot and Web3 communities broadly. And we would use the mechanisms on chain to come to a consensus around the stories we want covered and payment, securing reporters for those stories, paying them out, and then producing and distributing the SMS PDF, probably on a monthly or bi-monthly basis to start. I don't see this being a breaking news outlet, which is where then I go back to this yellow journalism concept and this investigative journalism concept. The web is very much inspired by parts of things like the New York world in the 1800s, and an understanding of the need for things like investigative journalism in crypto, because we don't have it. There's very rarely an investigative journalist who gets full-time into crypto. And what tends to happen is investigative journalists at major outlets like the New York Times will come in and do the investigative journalism here and there in crypto when it bubbles up to their level. And that's always going to be something that's probably just broadly negative for the crypto community. Nate Popper at the New York Times sometimes writes about blockchain and crypto, but it's never positive ever. And there's a lot of crap that goes on in blockchain and crypto, the blockchain and crypto industry, that needs to be covered with a fine-tooth comb, and no one's really willing or able to do it at the established crypto outlets, because they also really don't want to piss off the small industry community of companies that they cover every day. So it really puts them between a rock and a hard place, not being able to go after the dirt and go after like really deep investigative stories, or cover things with a level of granularity that might require a reporter to be paid for 3 weeks, a month, 2 months to really dive into a story. And that's the sort of journalism that I would want a community-owned and governed outlet to do. So there's a lot of interesting directions that we can take this. I would say that the only sort of Web 2 bridge to the web would be a portal to collect people's name and telephone number for an SMS approval. But it would allow you to understand fully the scope of what the community wants to read about. It would be able to source leads on interesting stories, both positive and stories that we need to uncover, where there's due diligence needs to be done on the legitimacy of a company or a individual or a conspiracy or a growing community that wouldn't otherwise get covered by a major crypto outlet, and really requires a reporter to be funded to dig in over an extended period of time, rather than having a two-day to week-long window and having reporters on staff all the time who have quotas of stories they need to push out in bullet points every couple hours. This would not fulfill that need. The other thing that I think it would need to include that doesn't exist in crypto media and is slowly sort of falling out of a lot of industry media is op-eds. There's no good op-ed pages for crypto. So this is the other piece that the web would facilitate is be the de facto op-ed page for companies, individuals, protocols, movements to present their opinion and ideas on where this industry is going, and then provide whoever's on the other side of the argument a space to rebut those arguments if necessary. I think we can really grow a very vibrant community around that specific piece of it. And that's where then the third sort of piece of the web comes to view, where the web would also facilitate a community owned and governed and driven podcast, which I believe, at least to start, would be best served as a debate platform for protocol governance. So I use, for example, the ProgPow debate in the Ethereum world, where I used to spend quite a lot of time. It was never really fully concluded. It was always quite confusing. There was never a sort of central place for the debate to come to its climax, to crescendo. And I think that if we are able to build this community and get buy-in from the core communities in crypto that we're talking to, many of the teams and protocols that companies like ChainSafe works with, to have representative hosts that would come on a fairly regular basis to this sort of podcast and debate with or moderate the debate between the either side of critical protocol issues on a fairly regular basis. Again, this sort of a podcast wouldn't be tied down by having to put out a show every week or every 2 weeks. It wouldn't be tied down by having to report on what the breaking news is. It would really be able to dig into the deeper issues and host, or be a platform to host, debates on core protocol changes and upgrades. So whether that's ProgPow or whether that's figuring out some future specification for Filecoin, or debating the merits of funding public good parachain slots or bridges on Polkadot, I think it would provide a really interesting environment for those conversations to take place, and it would provide a lot of clarity for people without introducing the sort of business motives that tends to drive a lot of the reporting in traditional media and in crypto media. So I think I've got 5 or 10 minutes left. I will, I think, take some questions, because I've moved through a lot of stuff very quickly, and this is the first time I've really talked about this publicly. It's an idea I've had for probably 18 months, 2 years, even longer, really, since I first really got introduced to this vendor that I know that does really rich text, rich media SMS delivery, and the idea that we could send like a interactive PDF into someone's pocket once a month that really covers like core issues without having to rely on sort of the regular just drumbeat of what's going on in an industry. So yeah, if there are any questions, I'm interested in to see what you all think.
Wow, Peter, that was a fascinating talk. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And
I just wrote it this morning. I could have been swamped
amazing.
The last couple of weeks on Polkadot Decoded.
That's great.
I appreciate
That's
you all
awesome.
also, yeah.
It seems to hark back to a Declaration of the Independence of Cyberspace written by Tim Berners-Lee back in the day. And as a huge Marshall McLuhan fan, I also think that this Media 3.0 masthead touches on ideas like the global village that he envisioned, that the media would be the electronic central nervous system. So this is super exciting. I think we do have time for 2 questions. The first question for you, Peter, is the consensus we're concerned with in distributed systems is categorically different from consensus in contexts like journalism. How do you imagine misinformation being handled in Media 3.0?
Yeah, so this is where the distributed consensus systems come into play, and the idea that the web is based on a parathread model on Polkadot, and would be would be an oracle of sorts, right? Where there's mechanisms on chain for experts to verify that information is accurate, and the governance of the web parachain would be able to vote on the veracity of information or verify and eliminate misinformation before it goes to print. So again, this is a concept of, or this is relying on a lot of the concepts in Polkadot governance, where there would likely be governed by, again, a tricameral model where the council on Polkadot would be like a voted editorial council of whether it's reporters or community members that are really in the know, would be the editorial committee who would go through and verify and validate information that is going to go to print in a edition of the web, and also have the ability to strike what is verified as misinformation before it goes out. And the community votes on those people into those editorial positions. It rotates continuously. So if there's a malicious council member and the community realizes this, they could very quickly be eliminated on a regular basis. And it's transplanting that trust from a corporate-driven editorial committee in behind closed doors at the New York Times to an open model based on chain, right? So that would allow us to publicly verify and vet information before we as a community put it out as the official narrative.
Right, and that's probably a better solution than just allowing people to say whatever
they want. Right, and this is going to the Substack issue is like, are they creating the same issues that exist in traditional media? And the answer is yes, and it's potentially even worse, because yes, these are great reporters. Now they're able to make more money using Substack, but the editorial board is an editorial board of one, right? So many situations, maybe it allows information that wouldn't otherwise get through an editorial vetting process that's good and true to get out on one side, but also it's one guy or gal who can just push out whatever they want to say. And who knows, they may have an agenda. The web very much has an agenda. It's the adoption of Web3 technologies. It is yellow journalism in that sense that it is going to be biased in support of a transition away from Web 2, but it's out front about it, right? And the editorial decisions that are made on the information get vetted in public.
Great. Yeah, that's super interesting. And I'd love to hear more. And maybe there's another place where we can connect.
Well, this is
other
the first.
People can view slides. You can
Yeah.
post on Twitter or something so people could reach it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to write an op-ed in CoinDesk for the end of the year on it, and I'll circulate that as well. This is you were all here for the first time I really talked about it, so I'm excited to talk more about it.
Amazing. Well, we feel very grateful to have you on today.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have left, guys. Thank you very much, Peter. We're going to take a short break after this. Yep. Going to take a short 2-minute break, and we'll be back to talk about debt-based financing from an investment principal at Consensus. So I'll see you guys in 2 minutes.